And so that is why that humane said that not having sex with a woman equals abortion. Wait, what? Oh, crap. I clicked the streaming button. Hello, everybody. It is the Dark Conservatarian, and I am here streaming with CultofHam, and I thought that would got more of a chuckle out of him out of that.
I didn't know we're live.
Yeah, I think I said that I was streaming via OBS,
Not through Hangouts?
not through Hangouts. I mean, we're having the call over Hangouts, but if you check my channel right now, yeah, we're streaming via OBS. I got a fanciful blue fire background, and I have myself up in the corner there, and you presented up on my screen, up on Google Hangouts. But anyway,
Yeah.
so
Alright.
how you doing, Ham? Tell
I'm doing
everyone how you
alright.
doing.
I'm doing alright. I started out feeling pretty shitty, during the 4th of July weekend. I probably slept around 18 hours a day. And I think that might have been why I was feeling so shitty, because I had not been sleeping very well last few weeks, but, like 2 days, like sleeping 18 hours a day, I'm finally starting to feel alright.
Well, I
And
don't
I
know
and,
if
and I think I would actually feel pretty good if I didn't have this god awful fucking sunburn on me.
you sure that isn't the fireworks.
No, I was at a pool party the other day,
No, I'm
and
joking. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would be able to live with myself sleeping 18 hours a night for even like 2 nights or over the weekend
well,
or
that that
whatever.
that, that, that was after like like two or 3 weeks of like sleeping only like 3 or 4 hours a day.
3 or 4 hours. Jeez.
Yeah, I was not not sleeping very well, and hopefully I've reset my sleeping schedule.
Maybe 10 hours a night, per night over a weekend at max for me personally, but I don't think I would be able to. I probably wake
That
up
that
with headaches and
I'm
just
not
feeling like
saying I'm
crap.
not I'm not saying this is as if it's a normal thing. I'm saying this as this is a reset of my sleeping schedule.
Okay.
I am not getting old, Chris. Fuck you.
Well, well, even like momentarily, even just like a one-off. I don't know, but that's just me.
I mean, everyone every once in a while needs a bit of a reset in their sleep schedule.
Yeah, I get that. And typically, when I have a Saturday that I'm not scheduled working and I sleep in late, is a morning that I'll end up like sleeping in more than I want to, more than I should probably even, and I'd be waking up with a headache and just in general feeling like crap. That's just me.
All right, enough small talk. Why are you an alt writer, and why do I hate you? Oh wait,
You're an alt writer because you would dare call Owen the N word. No, I'm joking.
I I there's someone I responded to on Twitter the other day who said that by my standards, a classical liberal I would consider a alt writer, which is the dumbest fucking shit I ever heard. Well, in that 10-minute stretch of period.
I don't know the context of that conversation, but
Yeah,
yeah. So yeah, about Humane Mind, he went kind of off the deep end back in December, back in February, hasn't he?
I have no idea what he's been up to here lately. Uh, Other than that,
Nobody
like
does.
he's kind of disappeared off the radar a bit. Other than retweeting stuff on his Twitter page.
Yeah. Well, he'd be having his once a week streams on his channel, but of course those don't go far, especially since he kind of turned off the attention of the poor bastards, which was like the only the only group that he could get any inroads to. And then of course he kind of turned us all off by saying the LGBT community are supportive of pedophilia.
Yeah,
And
that's sort of a your instant piece of shit at that point.
yeah. And I actually had an interview slash debate with Aircraft Sparky a couple weekends ago about
Uh,
those very same comments because he's the one who originally brought it up. But funny thing, originally, he was using the word supportive to say how the LGBT community feels about pedophilia, but then he kind of, sort of, I guess you could say, backtracks it to say complicit, which I'm highly doubtful of that too, but yeah, still. Uh, but anyway, I guess off of that subject. So, reason why I wanted to bring on CultofHam was just as a general discussion about politics. As of recently, it's just been a while since we've streamed and whatnot. One thing that I kind of want to bring up is how on the last live stream we were talking about, well, not even really the healthcare part of healthcare, but more like the cost side of healthcare more than anything else. You remember what was said on the last stream you and I were on?
Not really.
It was the one live stream where you were all like, "Hey, Darky Khan, how about you come on here and actually defend Republicans?"
You expect me to remember shit like that, man?
Yeah, but
I don't remember what I had for dinner last night, much less what I said on a live stream. What I guess is like weeks ago or something.
I think it might have been a month or two ago, even. But I don't know. So I don't know. I essentially wanted to like talk about the costs regarding like Bernie Sanders' healthcare plan. Kind of reiterate what was said right then. Um, I don't know. You like called me a liar at one point for mentioning the overall federal the cost would be on the federal level of how much it would raise federal spending.
Well, I mean, uh, uh, if you bring in any sort of you know uh universal health care or single payer health care system, of course, is going to raise taxes. The the Where the lie, I guess, is what that opponents of single payer never mention the fact that yes, your taxes will go up, but you won't have to pay the insurance premium, and the difference between that, you'll save money. Instead of spending 500 a month on your insurance, you only spend like 300 on your
Well, for one,
in new taxes.
300 in new taxes.
I mean, that
Well,
you'll net save money.
for one thing, isn't the idea that first of all that taxes do not get increased on the poorest people in the country, and two that they don't have to pay any amount directly into their own health insurance?
Well, that's the thing. They're effectively already paying a tax, and either paying for their insurance premiums directly or having it taken out of their weekly paychecks. They're already
Right.
paying for it. We're, we're, what we're saying is, okay, you pay less than that and you get a better system where you won't get denied health care.
Mm. Well, I guess I don't really see the lie in that because it's not like, for one, like I
It's
was intentionally misinforming anyone in that.
it's a lie by omission. You'll omit information.
Lie by omission. Okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding the definition of to omit because I always understood omit meaning to actually verbally say something.
But by the way, a lie by omission is probably the most common lie you'll ever hear in politics. You know, they won't directly say false things unless you're Donald Trump. They'll just fail to tell you important information. They'll, you know, swing your opinion one way or the other.
Well,
And every politician does that. The establishment politicians are the worst at it.
I guess one thing that I have to say, I guess by omission is practically a meaningless term
No, it's
because
not.
I understand. Because what I
If
understand
if
lying to be is if you are intentionally misinforming somebody or like intentionally telling an untruth, a non-truth. Like it's
It,
not like
if you're aware of information that if you told your audience or your constituents, if you told them that information, it swing their opinion in the direction that you don't want. But by omitting that information intentionally, you swing their opinion in the direction that you do want. That is the lie by omission.
for one thing, anybody who goes talking about the raising of federal spending when it comes to healthcare, they might not know either way on if it will actually cost more or less down to the individual level,
It
or
it,
really,
it
or really
it'll
even,
on
or
average
really
cost
even,
less.
or really even care for that matter, because that's the big thing for anybody who has like a right-leaning opinion on economics or healthcare, is that they want to keep government spending and government taxes. By the way, that's another key thing about fiscal conservatism, which was what we were talking about in our last stream together, is keep both of those as low as possible, and for
Well,
ANCAPs that be
what what ex-
non-existent.
what exactly is fiscally conservative about spending more for the same thing or the worse thing?
It's not. Spending,
Eh,
spending, spending,
exactly.
spending more in general, and particularly spending more to the point that you go raising the deficit when you already have a deficit. That ain't fiscally conservative
You
right
know,
there.
if
I
you look
guess I
eh,
guess
eh, if you
technically somebody could be fiscally conservative if like they're already running a surplus but they spend just a little bit more to use up that surplus. That
no no
could technically be fiscal
you're
conservatism,
missing
but
the
I don't know.
point. You have the UK healthcare system, which yeah, it's got a lot of problems, but it is by far probably the most socialistic healthcare system in the world. I mean, it's from top down, it's totally government owned, run, and paid for.
Right. I,
But they only spend about 8% of their GDP on healthcare, or was it 12%? It's less than half of what we spend here in America. We spend about 18% of our GDP on healthcare. So what's more fiscally conservative, spending 18% or spending 8 12%? Spending
that
8 twelve
depends on what
percent is
the
more.
that depends on what the public sector spending is.
No, in total GDP wise, the entire country,
I've
private
never.
and public, is spending 8 to 12% on healthcare, where here in the United States we're spending like 18%.
Here's where you and I are kind of differing on the definition of fiscal conservatism, because I've never understood fiscal conservatism to mean having opinion on how much people should spend in their private lives or in the private sector. I only understood fiscal conservatism to be applicable to public sector spending, to how fiscally conservative are you,
So
and
it,
what their
so
implication is how frugal are you to spending in the public sector, not really the private sector.
so fiscal conservatism doesn't has nothing to do with spending your money efficiently. It's just making sure the public doesn't spend all that much.
Um, well, I wouldn't put it that way. I would say that it has more about spending your money efficiently in the public sector more than it has to do in the private sector.
I mean, would you rather spend your money efficiently overall, or just spend your money efficiently in the private sector? I mean, in the public sector.
Preferably, I would like both, but at the same time, uh, I don't think
So
anybody is really.
why not
But at the
have
same
both?
time, I don't think anybody is responsible for my health care. And that
So
mentality goes for a lot of other people who are,
so
in general, against single payer healthcare.
yeah, you being healthy improve society overall, because if everyone is healthier, we don't have so much time, work time lost because people are home sick, or we don't have so many people dying early, or having more expensive procedures having to be done because they don't go to their doctors on a regular visit, or they don't have that weird lump you know inspected sooner rather than it later when it becomes a real serious issue.
If you wanna go off on a limb, then any personal decision that we make in our personal lives affects society as a whole, but that in some direct or indirect manner, but that still doesn't really determine as to whether or not it's the business of the government or anyone else on what that person is to do in their life. Like, for example, you're kind of suggesting that people should get insured and should get a cheaper healthcare for the good of society as a whole. But at the same time, I recall that, but at the same time, you're not against people, being able to smoke crack or obnoxious amounts of weed or whatnot. Last I checked, anyways, and you
Well,
don't and you don't believe that, and you don't and you do believe that suicide is a person's own personal right. So yeah.
okay. Well, people will commit suicide either way, and weed's a hell of a lot safer drug than alcohol or nicotine.
Well, okay, sure. Or let's even bring up alcohol. Like, I don't think that you're for prohibiting alcohol for that matter.
Absolutely not, because
Okay.
banning alcohol has worse effects on society than having it legalized, taxed, and regulated.
Okay. And so the point being, like, we don't want to put any cap on how much booze a person can drink. But at the same time, if they do drink
I mean,
obnoxious amounts of booze, that would affect society as a whole because they're not taking good care
there,
of themselves.
there is a cap on how much booze you can take. It's called the lethal limit or the legal limit to drive.
Well, okay. Well, I wasn't like taking into contribution whether or not they're driving. I'm just saying, like, in general, like, if they were to, there was no cap on how much they can drink if they're not driving. Let me put it that way.
I mean, we do have limits on things where we know it'll negatively affect other people. If it only negatively affects you, you know,
We have warning labels, but is it illegal for somebody to get, excuse me, blackout drunk just as long as they aren't driving or anything or operating machinery or anything like that?
no, because the only person you're harming is yourself. It's when you start harming other people that's
Exactly.
when it becomes a problem.
Well, that's the yeah, that's the point that I'm trying to make there. I mean, it's a kind of an indirect effect on society. If a person was to like go ahead and get blackout drunk, they're going to make themselves less efficient of a person contributing to society or whatever. But at the same
But
time, it's not necessarily the job of the government to say no, you cannot get yourself blackout drunk, even if you're
here's
not driving or operating machinery
here's my point
or
with
firearms.
here's my point with having universal health care. You know, if we get everyone insured and going to the doctors, they will see an overall benefit in their lives. They'll be healthier. They won't be sick so often. They'll be more productive, more efficient. They won't be the having this healthcare. It's not preventing bad thing. It's promoting good things, and there's no cost or virtually no there's only everything the benefit and gain from having a single payer or universal healthcare system versus the private healthcare disaster we have now.
Mm.
I mean, by no by no criteria can you claim that you know that the American healthcare system is anywhere even close to good.
Well, the cancer death rates are better than most of the world. Like, there was an article that I had just read today, like,
I
not
mean,
in
you can
full
share.
length, but I was looking at the graphs. There are only like two other countries that are better than America when it comes to cancer mortality rates. That being
Yeah,
Switzerland, which has
with
a kind of a
specific
kind of a
cancer.
which Switzerland has kind of a privatized healthcare system as well. They're not without any regulations, but it's
Which
more
specific
private than a lot.
cancers? Because those studies are touching on specific types of cancer.
They're
There's
just
there's
saying
a,
that the
there,
article was
there's
just saying overall was just saying cancer in general.
of course, but those articles are referring to certain studies that were talking about specific cancers.
Hmm. I don't know.
I mean,
I'm just looking at it on the surface, like, but
that
still, that's besides the point. Like, just overall on cancer,
no,
America is doing
that's not
well.
beside the point. Those studies you're talking those articles you're referring to are referencing studies that were looking at specific types of cancers.
No, it wasn't.
Yes,
It was looking at overall cancer rate, the overall cancer rate. I'll have to like send you the
so
article,
okay,
because it wasn't mentioned.
I'm pretty sure I've seen the articles that you're talking about, and it's I think it's talking about leukemia, no childhood leukemia, and I think breast cancer.
Well, this one is not mentioning breast cancer or
Well,
leukemia or anything else like that. It just
of
said
course they're not.
cancer.
They're articles. They're
Health
you
system
know
tracker.
depending on whether either it be sloppy writing or just lie by omission.
Health
You
system
know,
tracker. That's the name of the website that I got it from, and I'm trying to uh
health system tracker.
yeah, what the heck? Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to try to share the freaking site. Oh jeez. No. Okay, share. Where's the copy link button on my? Oh, there it is. It's just buried down below.
I mean,
And
I mean,
go to
you,
Twitter.
using that website, the Peterson Kaiser Health System Tracker, you can find all kinds of studies and graphs that if you cherry pick the types of data, you can easily formulate, your arguments. Like, for instance,
There's the article, by the way. That was talking about cancer rates.
where,
I just sent it to you on Twitter.
oh,
Like it has a. I did not. Now, granted, I did not read the whole article. I was just browsing over the graphs, and there are some graphs as to where that they show that the U.S. is kind of hit and miss. Some of them showing America to be fairly similar to other countries or to the national or international rather average. But when it comes to cancer rate, that in particular is where that the U.S. does fairly well, with only Japan and Switzerland doing good. Which I'll emphasize, Switzerland
wait,
has
hold
kind
on.
of a fairly privatized healthcare system.
How does the mortality rates in the U.S. compare to?
Well, I guess it's talking more specifically about different mortality rates.
Oh. Uh,
No, there's a also I will say even though you think it's kind of a pointless thing, but to us it's not really pointless. The wait times in the U.S. in comparison to,
of course, another place that right wingers love to pick, the cherry pick data on. Tell me,
well, I'm
what's
just
the
mentioning you
uh,
advantages of the U.S. over others.
what's the wait times for treatments that you cannot afford?
Ultimately, there is none.
Yeah, infinite.
Infinite until
You
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 can get the
have you have
payment.
40 that's something that universal health care opponents leave out all the time is the what are the wait times for treatments that you cannot afford to get, that you don't have the money to buy or the insurance to get or the ability to get.
And also, I will add that I am kind of doubtful as to how often that the ER will just flat out deny you any treatment at all, because
They're required to stabilize you, but if you have any underlying health disorder, like a cancer or some sort of genetic disease or whatever, They're not required to fix that. They're just required to stabilize you. And sometimes they'll just
They're not required to
they'll
save your
di-
life.
they'll discharge you if you can't pay.
Well, either they can in all eventuality pay, like they'll probably be in debt for the long term, but they can just like slowly pay off that debt for one thing. I guess I'm talking about this more from personal experience because my dad, he doesn't, and I don't think he ever really had health insurance, yet he got treated for his strokes and is living today. So, and just slowly paying off that payment for the stroke treatment and whatnot is what the family is going through. And there's no interest being charged on that debt either.
Hmm.
What's up, Conundrum and Red Feather, Scorch, Slavey McSlaverson, and the chat is like being lit up right now. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess as far as fiscal conservatism goes, I just want to like add another key thing about fiscal conservatism is it's not just like getting a balanced budget. As far as what I know what fiscal conservatism to be, it also an inherent thing about that idea is also that you decrease taxes or keep them as low as possible without jacking up spending and whatnot.
Well, there hasn't been a fiscal conservative in office, probably since the beginning.
Not
Hell,
yeah, not really.
I mean, unless you want to count Obama as a fiscal conservative, I mean, he actually reduced the deficit.
A .7 trillion stimulus package, and
He reduced the deficit.
yeah, he might have overall reduced the deficit, but no president
See,
ever got it reduced to like.
you see, this
Okay,
is what I,
the only person
this is what I'm finding really frustrating with
actually.
with quote unquote fiscal conservatives, because it's not actually about being responsible with money. It's just, oh, don't, fuck the welfare state, fuck, the left and the liberals. How do we, how do we beat this ticket so we can get elected? Then just jack up spending and cut taxes for the rich. That's all about.
Well,
That's all
sure.
it ever is.
Well, project that attitude on establishment GOP all you want, but if you want to like project that kind of attitude on grassroots conservatives, doubt it, dude. Doubt it.
Well, you guys are just useful idiots for Republicans.
Love you too, honey ham. So, what was that? What was I gonna mention? Actually, you go mentioning about any president being fiscal conservative. Actually, the only person that I would say comes close to a fiscal conservative would be, in recent memory, anyways, would be Clinton because he actually got a surplus, even though technically there was no actual cutting that gone on there. What actually here happened there is that they actually had some savings saved up from Social Security funds to where that they had like a very momentary surplus. But either way, he might be the only one that we could call truly a fiscal conservative. As far as Obama goes, yeah, I can't because he's still like left off with what was it a point 0.4 0.6 trillion deficit,
He
and
reduced the deficit.
he
How is that not fiscally conservative? Reducing spending, reducing spending that you're just buying up paying for with debt.
well, if you want to go off of that logic, reducing the deficit, I'm sure I could probably find other presidents that reduce the deficit. That would mean that there would be more than just Obama.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they won't be Republicans either. I mean, your boy Donald Trump. He
My
jacked up
boy
the
Donald
deficit.
Trump. Do you even know me, guy?
And also let's not forget, the surplus that Bill Clinton left us with. George W. Bush wiped his ass with that with the two Iraq wars.
No,
I mean, with the Iraq and Afghanistan
nobody
war.
is claiming Bush Jr. to be fiscally conservative. And your boy Donald Trump, like, dude, I voted for Evan McMullen in 2016, and he's proving to be a pretty disappointing when it comes to like his free trade and gun rights positions and whatnot. You seem to be that's another thing. You seem pretty apathetic when it comes to gun rights, especially for somebody who claims to want to bring back full automatic rifles.
Well, if I had my own ideal, um, if I had my ideal gun control legislature, machine guns would be just totally legalized. They'll be extremely difficult to get because they would be some of the most effective firearms for committing a mass shooting. If I was to create gun control legislature, anything with a detachable box magazine or a drum magazine or a semi-auto, I would put those in a restricted tier. And if they happen to combine both of those, I put them in a tier higher. You know, you know, the problem with left wingers, they don't know what is actually dangerous when it comes to. They don't know what it actually makes a gun dangerous. A flash hider, being painted black, a
Wait,
pistol
what?
grip.
Right wingers don't know what makes
No, left wingers.
oh, left
You know,
wingers.
you
I
know,
thought I
gun,
heard.
you
My
know,
bad. I thought I heard you say right wingers for some reason.
gun control advocates. They don't know what actually makes a gun dangerous. They just see what makes a gun scary looking, and that's what they ban. What makes a gun dangerous is the ability to rapidly reload and rapidly send bullets down range. You know, if you get rid of detachable box magazines and semi-auto, you're basically left with the effective fire rate of a single shot rifle. You get a tube loader. Sure, you got 13 rounds on tap, but once you empty that out, you got to load one bullet at a time. Or if you get some like a bolt action, you're generally limited to 5 to 10 rounds. It's usually firing a cartridge that'll shatter your collarbone if you're not holding it right. You know, it, you know, gun control advocates need to know and realize what actually makes a gun dangerous, and it's the ability to send firepower downrange and the ability to reload quickly and have a whole lot of rounds when you do reload.
Hmm.
You know,
Well, hey, yeah, just rewinding the conversation a little bit back to when I mentioned as to how disappointing Trump is on gun rights, and you kind of scoffed that. Like, I just want to like ask of how important gun rights is to you.
um, in terms of issues I would be voting on, it wouldn't even make the top 10.
Wouldn't even make the top 10. That's
Um, I, the
kind
issues
of
that
what I
I care,
suspected.
the issues that I'd be voting for would be things like, you know, campaign finance reform, um, universal health care, fixing climate change, green technology, um, uh, regulating the increasing power that private corporations have over us in our private lives, in terms of social media and invading our privacy. You know, those are really serious, dire issues, and I don't give a fuck. How many guns you have. All the guns in the world is not going to protect you from the modern corporate oligarchy.
You're talking about the government and the military and police and whatnot. I mean,
Yeah, if
you
it,
can think that it's hopeless all you want, but a lot of us would rather go down fighting. Thank you. If
well,
something like
it could
like
be
a
pointless. That's the thing. The military, the difference between you and a bunch of rednecks with shotguns and a standard modern military unit is so vast. It's laughable. You
a lot of people in elections, like particularly in the districts where they are outnumbered by a huge majority, they would probably think that it's, in their case anyways, it probably is overall pointless that they be voting.
no
But
no no no
but it doesn't,
not
but that doesn't mean that you don't vote at all. Like in the case of
no
what we're
no no
talking about
no
here, like
you're
the
not
case that we're
understanding my point.
like
You're not understanding my
can
point.
I finish
That,
my
that,
point?
no,
Like,
I know what your point is, and I'm about to tell you why you're wrong. This is not about you know like being like AOC and overcoming such a huge monetary advantage that the other guys had by sheer willpower and ability to campaign and force of will. This is you know you know you the average American citizen versus the average American military soldier. You know,
yeah, and
that,
how much do gun owners in America outnumber the military? And plus, there are some of the military
it
that
could be
will.
it could be a million to one. The military would still win. The military has tanks. They have planes. They have drones. The military could kill a million American
So
citizens without ever sending a single
you're.
military soldier in harm's way.
I don't really see this as a case that people should just give up. Like if they think that they should just stand
I,
up to the government or
how am I saying?
revolution or
How am I
whatever.
saying to give up?
Well,
Yeah,
you're saying that you're kind of saying that it's pointless, which that
no,
almost kind of implies it.
no. This is just simply understanding that your guns is not going to protect you. You have to safeguard your rights. You have to check. You have to check the government, check the private corporations. Keep them in check, so they don't. So you're not put in a situation where you're just hopelessly outgunned, outmaneuvered, with no recourse.
Okay. I mean, you can say that it's pointless all you want, but that still is not going to make people stop resisting or thinking that guns are not important to help out in resisting in one way or another. It's, I mean, even like putting aside
Again, you're not
even
understanding the point.
even putting aside the whole government aspect, people will still want guns to defend themselves from the common criminal, at least.
Again, you're
That's
not
very
understanding
important.
the point. The idea that your guns are there to protect you from the big bad government. You know that would have been true in the days of muzzle loaders or even early repeaters, but not with the military we have now. The it, you know it the modern military is just you know several orders of magnitude more capable than a standard
You kind of
civilian force.
you're kind of essentially repeating the same point that it's hopeless, just in different words, seemingly.
No, I am not saying it's hopeless. I'm saying guns will not.
I
You
thought that was what
can't
you said
rely on
earlier.
on the ideas of having a gun to protect your rights, because when it gets to that point, it will be hopeless.
I You say it's not hopeless, but then you say at the end of that statement, it will be hopeless. And
No,
I thought,
listen to my words. You cannot rely on your guns to protect your rights because by the time it gets to that point, it will be hopeless. You have to safeguard your rights. You have to check, the people in power. All right, that's where you know
I mean, sure, vote for the short term of things, so that your liberties do not get infringed upon and whatnot.
no,
But
voting is the long term solution.
it's a long term. Well,
Getting
whatever it be,
you know
whatever it be. I mean, there are a
getting
lot of people that make the case that no matter how you vote, it's still in the long term, the government will just get a more bigger and bloated and start infringing more and more on people's rights, and it's just a really
yeah,
uphill battle that's almost hopeless.
yeah, those people are empty headed morons.
Hmm. Hmm.
The long term goal, you got to get private money out of politics. You got to get special interest money out of politics.
And
You got
how likely is that to be?
how likely?
How
Uh,
likely is that to
it,
happen? I mean,
it'll be a pretty damn difficult fight.
exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to make the point. It's a pretty damn difficult fight to where it almost seems hopeless. And in the same scenario of going back to the whole citizens fighting against the government, it seems almost hopeless. But despite whether or not the people will win or not, is kind of
Well,
a moot
well,
point.
well,
Some
well,
people would rather go down fighting. I know I
why would
probably
you
would.
rather rely on your guns than rely on fixing the system within?
Okay, fixing the system within. If that is a possibility, if okay, if my circumstance and scenario is, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Is okay, if I can take the patience, if my circumstance and scenario permits me to be patient enough with the government, well then fine. Yeah, I'll take that route. Fix the system from within. But say for example, if the government actually started physically systematically rounding people up just because they're minorities or just because they're Christian or even uh, I'm thinking of some rather I guess one could say out there situations. But say if the government was to just systematically round people up off of arbitrary reasons, that's the type of situation I'm talking about right there. If that happens, then the people will want to resist. And despite it's whether or not the people will win or not, they would rather go down fighting than just hold their hands out and let themselves get arrested and round up and whatnot.
Well, once again, once you've gotten to that point, it's hopeless. You,
They
the,
still would
my,
rather go down fighting. Still rather go
I'm
down fighting.
talking about not getting to that point, preventing getting to that point.
Okay.
What
Okay.
is your
More power to you. More power to you.
and
But
what is your plan to not get to that to prevent getting to that point? You know, I've got, us on the left. We have ideas. We have plans. It's called campaign finance reform, getting money out of politics.
and
You
on the
know,
right we have a little thing called a I think it's called a constitutional amendment as to where to get the power so that it's not as much centralized in the federal government and relinquish that power more into state power. I mean,
that is so fucking
I
dumb.
know that you are not exactly for state powers and whatnot. I don't. You say that's
I,
dumb, but have you actually researched on it? Have you
how would
actually?
that actually put more power into the hands of the people
I don't know the
so they
nitty
so they
gritty
could
details of it.
they can more directly check the power of government.
I don't know the nitty gritty details of it. I just heard of the
And
idea
that's the
presented
problem.
by. I just heard the idea presented by Mark Levin, a constitutional lawyer who probably would know the details more than me. And I, and
Mark Levin's a fucking idiot.
And I can say the same about your senpai, Kyle Kalinske. But that's besides the point, though. That's besides the point, though, ain't it? And also Cenk Uygur, if you like him. I don't know all the role models that you like, but
Oh my god! Like
but that besides, but that aside, you go,
I can
but that
explain to you.
but that aside, but that aside, but that but that
I
aside,
can't
we're not
explain
talking
to
about
you
political
how
icons, though.
campaign finance reform
We're not.
would check the power of government. I can explain to you how introducing stuff like ranked choice voting would check the power of government. You can't do any of that with your ideas.
Maybe if you want me to go more researching into it, well then fine, whatever. But rewinding this back to what you said earlier, the left has solutions, the right does not. I just mentioned you an idea right there, is all. There's also the idea of other things like trying to loosen up gun rights like that. I don't know how popular it is, but some people on the right would like to see the 1986 assault rifles ban uh, repealed, for one
It,
thing.
it it's null and void.
Null and void.
There's a sunset clause on it.
No, I said the 1986 assault rifles ban. I'm not talking about the 1993 assault weapons ban. Two different bills. As far as I know,
What did the 1986 assault rifles ban do?
it was supposed to ban the further sale and production of any new fully automatic weapons.
Oh,
The 1993 assault weapons ban, that was supposed to ban the possession and okay, it was supposed to ban the possession and production of any further AR-15s and limit the size of magazine that you are allowed to possess. And I think there was something about universal background checks as well on guns and whatnot. But those are just some other ideas from the right and tried to preserve our liberties and so forth. Preserving gun rights or even repealing some laws that are meant to relinquish some gun rights. For example, the
but
1986 assault rifles.
once again, how does giving you more access to guns protect your other rights, like your freedom of speech, which is being consistently and constantly, treaded upon by not only not only the government,
The
but by
idea
private institutions.
the idea regarding owning a gun right, or excuse me, owning a gun. My bad. The idea of owning a gun is that if you want to speak, then go in and speak. And if the police decide to come up to you and say, hey, you're not allowed to say that or whatever, then you pull out your gun and say, fight me, bitch.
That and then how the fuck did Martin Luther King Jr. you know he and the rest of the civil rights movement almost universally non-violently get rid of segregation.
More power to them.
I mean, there was a
I
few
don't.
of them. There was a few of them that used guns that advocated for violence. Although Malcolm X never really actually advocated for violence, he just advocated for you know violence in defense of yourself. But none of them actually engaged in violence and using guns.
Okay, more
How
power
are
to
they?
them. Here's
How,
another example,
how,
though.
no, no, hey, fuck, no. How are they able to, institute one of the most sweeping, you changes in human rights in the 20th century, without ever actually, using guns? They just marched and protested peacefully.
I say more power to them. But here's another example: Clyde Bundy. Now, as much people want to debate as to whether or not he had an actual legitimate claim on that land, which I would say that he did, but nonetheless, he had a standoff with the police in that instance to protect his land. That would be a staple example right there of, some average Joe Schmo and his gang of buddies just protecting their rights, in this case, the right of ownership of that land from the government. As far as MLK and the rest of the civil rights movement goes, I say good for them. Like, I'm not trying to degenerate their, I don't know what you would say for that, what word you would put that to. I'm not trying to degenerate their efforts and their successes in that regard. I'm just trying to say that basically guns are supposed to be like a last resort when it comes to, protecting your rights.
Yeah, but why are people like you and others on the right so focused on the last resort where you should be focused on the first, second, and third resort?
Well,
You
we
know,
are focused on the first, second, and third resort as well, but
when, how,
there's
where?
also the other aspect regarding gun rights as well. Protection from the common criminal.
No, no, you're still focused on guns. Well, what about your first, second, third resorts?
Um,
You
what?
know,
First, second, and third resorts? Well, then,
what about your friend? How do you use your freedom of speech? How do you use your freedom of protest? You know, how do you
that's
do campaign
fine.
fire? So focused on the last resort, gotta use my guns to defend against the evil government when you should
Hold on a
prevent the
second. I
government
had
from
an
when you
OBS
should be
disconnect for
preventing
a
the
second.
well, which Tea Party?
Which Tea Party?
Are you talking about the
I'm
Are you
talking. No,
talking
I'm
about
talking about
the
the.
Boston Tea Party or the Ted Cruz Tea Party?
I'm talking about the more modern. Well, both actually, for that matter. The more modern Party as well. They
Yeah.
had their own protests where they were like physically walking out in the streets and whatnot.
Yeah,
And
and I
also the
will admit
issue.
they were rather successful,
Okay,
which is
well
why we
then,
got
thank you
people
for
like
admitting that.
yeah, but that's because because they didn't resort to the last resort. They actually
Okay.
used their
No, no, no. You were
gun.
asking. You were asking about the first, second, and third resort. That's just a matter. That's just an example of the first, second, and third resort, or whatever, you know,
Except
succession you want to put that in. They did not resort to the last resort. That's just an example of them not resorting to the last resort. And
except
also protesting and
how have you?
protesting and
How,
protesting against abortion as well. Like not yeah,
shit.
there's like that one whack job who wants to resort to going ahead and just blowing up an abortion clinic, killing an abortionist or whatever. And I would overall yeah, actually, no, I would pretty much condemn that because mostly just because abortion is not an objectively viewed issue, an objectively uh, viewed as an objectively immoral issue. But still, people are like just protesting in that
No,
area.
no, 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 no. Let's get this straight. Abortion is immoral, but banning abortion would be even more immoral because you're attacking the bodily
Okay,
autonomy of women.
well, however you want to frame that, but that aside, we're not talking about abortion. We're talking about first, second, and third resort, and not to mention
I mean, it
the
all plays into
Republican
one another.
the Republican voting base. They do vote as much as they care about gun rights. They do go to the resort of voting before they ever have to, whip out their guns to go fight in the government and whatnot. And again, I must emphasize, I don't know if you're like hearing me on this point. Another reason as to why gun rights is so important is because they want to protect themselves from the common criminal. We want to protect ourselves from the common criminal. And I would think that you would too.
Except you know, such things are are so rare.
Three million cases.
You're more likely to shoot yourself in the face than ever have to defend yourself
Three million.
from a
3 million
criminal.
cases.
What?
There was an
Uh,
article that I had read talking about that there were like around like at least 1 to 3 million cases of where guns were used in self-defense. Well, and it doesn't even really matter as to whether they actually had to pull the trigger or not. Just the mere possession of that firearm, knowing that they were able to defend themselves, the criminal just backs off, just walks off.
Funny how you went from like defender against to go. The whole thing we're talking about is how do we check the power of government? Now you're going
They're
how do we
both
make sure
important.
the criminals don't steal my purse?
They're both important, Ham.
Except
They're both. I don't know what the point was supposed to be right there. We view as both of those as being important.
except how do you solve the problems with criminals? Do you solve it reactively or proactively? I would advocate for solving it proactively. You know,
Proactively? Well, what do you mean in that
using a
regard?
gun against a criminal, that's a reactive solution. Doing it proactively, you can improve the welfare state so that said criminal wouldn't have to resort to violence to pay their bills or feed themselves or their families. You can
Um.
you can legalize, tax, or regulate all drugs, which will
Okay.
prevent which will you know prevent the need of that criminal from having to go rob someone for to get some drugs or
Well, sure,
you
I'm
know
all for decriminalizing drugs and whatnot, but that does not downplay the fact of the matter that someone will want to defend themselves from that wolfish gun or no, excuse me, not gun, drug dealer who decides to that they think that they have to kill some bitches in order to deal their drugs.
but
Oh,
but
excuse me.
but you have to understand,
Hmm.
in other countries like in Europe, well, whenever someone is actually murdered, that's a huge fucking news story. 10 people murdered in a year. Holy fuck! This was a horrible year for murders. You know, they don't have these huge systemic criminal issues that we seem to have here in the United States because they have more left wing policies. They have a a social welfare um, floor. They have programs to help prevent people from ending up on the streets. They have lower recidivism rates because they're not so focused on punishment and profiting off of criminals. They actually try to rehabilitate them. You know,
Okay.
this is what I find so insane about right wing policies. You guys never actually want to address the problem. You just react to the problem, and you guys usually react in the most
Well,
cavemanish ways.
not every person who uses or possesses a gun in self-defense actively has to actually shoot that criminal.
And you just fucking ignored every fucking point I just made.
As far okay, the thing about solutions, some of the proposed solutions to resolving, I guess you would say symptoms or no, things being like the cause of a crime or whatever. The thing about that is that some of those solutions are in a way designed to infringe on some people's liberties or meant to increase their taxes. Some people are not too fond of the idea of increasing their taxes. And as far as the issue of like if somebody is like having
Dar-
to resort to killing people or rob or whatever because of a lack of a welfare state, I mean particularly those who are just wanting to hold people at gunpoint over that issue. I don't know. I mean, are they really
what?
worth? Never mind. What's the point you want to make?
I, I want to ask you a real simple question. If you know, if you could get health care, or let's just say health, yeah, if you could get yourself, good, affordable, good, high quality health care, but all you had to do was instead of paying your insurance premium, you pay that equivalent amount in you pay a lesser equivalent amount in taxes. Would you do it?
Would I do it?
Yeah.
Perhaps a watered down version of your plan I could be
No, 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 no.
tolerant
Answer
to.
answer my question directly. Yes or no? Would you would you rather pay slightly higher taxes so you don't have to pay for an insurance premium if it means you get the same quality health care but at a overall lower cost? Would you do it?
Not necessarily no, not with the exact way that you're framing it.
So you would rather pay more to get the same insurance? Just pay,
I would rather pay more off of my own dime than be reliant on someone else's taxpayer dollar.
but it is off your own dime. You are paying you are paying your fair share of taxes into the insurance program. If this insurance program just happens to be funded
Well,
by the
currently
entirety of the country instead of just a much smaller group in
our,
that insurance
our
pool.
current tax rate is not enough to pay for like Bernie Sanders' healthcare plan or even Cortez's healthcare plan for that matter because
Well,
they're
yes,
both similarly
of course,
expensive.
taxes will have to go up.
Well, are you going
Well,
to
what I'm
increase my
asking
taxes or a
you,
rich dude's taxes?
well, what I'm asking you is, would you rather pay, a smaller amount in taxes instead of paying a higher premium for the same type of health care?
Except I'm not completely reliant off of my own taxes to have that healthcare paid for. The idea that you guys want to do, and I totally don't think that I'm strawmanning here, is to increase the taxes primarily of the rich, make poorer people almost completely reliant off of the rich and the taxes made from their incomes.
I mean, aren't the poor
So
already completely reliant on the rich
via welfare, yes.
via jobs?
Jobs. Well, we're talking about the public sector here.
No, 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 no,
As
no,
far
no,
as the private
no, no,
sector
no, no, no,
goes,
no, no, no.
as far
You
they
just
can
said,
they can voluntarily
my
go for
God.
employment if they want to for
Are
all
you,
I
are you
care.
ever like gonna address a question directly and honestly, or are you just gonna keep on deflecting?
I don't know what you mean by deflecting. Some of these questions you are framing in a way that
Yeah,
I would not frame it.
I'm asking you yes or no questions.
Okay,
And I'm framing them in what will really happen. But for whatever reason, you're so tied into your, you know, I don't like liberalism idea just so much that you'd rather shoot yourself in the foot than enjoy the fruits of your labor. Get the same service, but at a lower cost. And the only thing that changes is that instead of paying a private insurance company, you're paying in taxes, which is effectively a publicly owned insurance company.
well,
It
I was
I don't
pointing out as to how that you're framing it is not exactly how it would go as far as that if
How
we,
would it
you
go?
I mean, are you going to increase taxes on the poor to pay for their own healthcare system, or are you going to raise taxes on the rich to pay for the poor people's healthcare system? As far as I know, the latter is the plan that the left wants to go
Why is
for.
it bad to tax the rich? I mean, they're already under taxed the way it is.
Okay, well, that I will say is more of your opinion than anything
No, no,
else.
no. They are
Your
under
your
tax.
your opinion and your left
Yeah.
wing icons and compatriots and whatnot.
So you really think Jeff Bezos deserves to own 160 billion dollars all by himself just because he owns
I don't
Amazon?
I don't think that rich people should be obtaining subsidies, but if their wealth is like legitimately earned, and by the way, again, subsidies is not a legitimate way, but if there's income is legitimately earned, then yeah, let them keep it. But that that aside, the
But
reason why I wasn't answering the your question the exact way you wanted me to is because it seems that your question was kind of implying that only that an individual is only going to get taxed just enough to pay for their own healthcare system on an individual basis. But not every person is going to get taxed to pay for their own healthcare system. Some of them are going to be too poor for you or Bernie Sanders or Cortez or anyone else to want to tax to pay for their own healthcare system. You're going to want to tax the richer people to pay for those poor Joe's healthcare system.
what again? Why is it wrong to tax rich people when they can clearly and obviously more than afford it? I mean, you
Okay,
know,
I guess we'll segue onto this then.
Jeff Bezos could lose half of his wealth. He wouldn't even notice. He could lose another half. Wouldn't even notice. He could lose another half.
Okay,
He could be down
okay.
to 1% of his original wealth. He would still be filthy fucking rich. If I got reduced down to 1% of my wealth, or hell, no. If I was just reduced to 2/3 of my wealth, I'd be fucking destitute. I'd be on the fucking street.
And that's the exact reason as to why I did not answer your earlier questions on healthcare exactly the way I wanted to. But as
No,
far
you
as
didn't
Jeff
answer them
Bezos,
at all.
as far as, jeez, as far as Jeff Bezos go, I cannot care less if somebody is like far richer than me.
Well, why the fuck is the conundrum in the chat so focused on me being a racist?
I don't know.
Sorry. I
I don't know. I think he's referring back to February of last year or something. That incident, or actually no, was it February or was it January?
I don't give a fuck.
Anyway,
It,
a conundrum. I would kind of advise you to get off of that subject. That is an old issue that we don't need to be seriously bringing up.
I'm jealous of other people's successes. Yes. Oh, I am so jealous of other people's successes. I forget who this comedian was, but he said this. When I was poor, they said I was bitter. When I was rich, they said I was a hypocrite. So basically, the people just don't want you talking about income inequality.
I don't view income inequality as an issue in of itself.
How, how is it not an issue when you have a handful of people worth more than the bottom half of the planet? How can you sustain?
Why is it an issue? I mean
But because
you're
you
the
have
one
half,
that's making the
you have to
positive
have
claim
half
there.
the planet that can't even feed themselves. Yeah, you got the top half of the planet. You got five or six people who will literally never enjoy, you know, 10% of their wealth, even if they just lived in absolute luxury every single moment of their entire lives, just eating all the expensive dinners and buying all the women and you know buying out the comic book market.
Well, okay, that then the question should be what should we do about this poverty? The question shouldn't be what should we do about this rich person's wealth and how they're like able to afford these expensive meals, buy a dozen prostitutes or something
You,
like that.
you're asking me how I would help the people in poverty?
No.
Uh, I,
I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is what the issue should be. Like when you go talking about when you or Bernie Sanders, anyone goes talking about but wealth inequality. The question that you're implying there is what should we do about a person's wealth? But then the you bring up poverty like you just now did. The question should be what should we do about poverty, not what should we do about another person's wealth.
what? I what? That makes no fucking sense.
The question should be what do we do about people's poverty, not what should we do about people's wealth.
and I was about to address people who are in poverty. You know,
You already did
if
address people who are in
if
poverty.
people if everyone had at least a bare minimum, they could feed themselves, house themselves, clothe themselves, you know, it, enjoy, you know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'd be fine with that. If people had a house, if people had a running water, electricity, food, I'd be fine with that. But you got
And they
but you
would
got
and there would
but you
still
got
be rich people. There would still be wealth
I'm
inequality.
fine with rich people existing. That
So in a way you're fine with wealth inequality then?
I'm fine with rich people existing so long as it doesn't severely negatively affect the lives of everyone else.
Well, a rich person owning a shit ton of wealth does not in of itself affect directly affect a person and whether or not they're able to feed themselves. I mean,
Except it does.
it's
It,
not
it,
like that
it,
the rich person like gone up and held a poor person at gunpoint like give me whatever scraps of money
oh
and
my
food that
god!
you have.
It the planet has finite resources, and everyone has
Okay.
the minimum things they need to survive. A certain amount of water, a certain amount of food, shelter, etc. If you're sucking up all those finite resources and leaving only scraps for everyone else, you're going to have people who are negatively affected by that absurd wealth inequality.
Hmm.
I mean,
Uh, uh,
well, we got people here in the United States who don't have clean drinking water, who don't have reliable electricity, who are living in homes that should have been condemned decades ago.
I don't know exactly what your point that you're bringing up there is supposed to imply or whatnot, but anyway. So,
I guess you just don't have any empathy for poor people.
oh no, I do, and plenty of other people on the right do. They show that through their own private donations, though.
What the fuck are private donations going to do? What the fuck's charity going to do when we have millions and billions of people worldwide just living absolute destitution?
It's not going to completely obliterate poverty, but it can still help some lives out.
It does. It doesn't even put a dent into it. Why is it so difficult to implement the welfare state system that most of the European countries have, that we know work, that we know are affordable, that we know how to pay for it? We just don't want to. Why is that so difficult?
As far as welfare goes, I can only speak for myself on that. That is a tolerable compromise. The people who are truly needy, anyways. But if a person is going to be proactively just a lazy bum, I don't want that type of a person on welfare, though.
I
Um,
mean,
things like
you're
things
going to
like
have
nationalizing.
you're always going to have welfare queens no matter what system. But guess what? They're
Okay,
tiny,
and I think that
insignificant. They're a tiny, insignificant, portion that it would actually cost more to try to weed them out than it would be just pay for their existence.
well, there was a way that we were able to like keep that somewhat in control. That was with a work mandate that Obama had like repealed during his administration regarding food stamps. That was one thing.
Yeah, how do you implement it?
It was
And
implemented. It
how do
was
you
implemented before Obama had taken office.
let me rephrase it. How do you enforce it? How do you make sure people are working? I mean, yeah, I mean,
Let's see.
the whole thing about food stamps is You don't have work, so that's why you can't afford food.
And the idea was that they be either actively searching for a job or working a job. From what I vaguely know of the individual or of the work mandate for applying for food stamps, is that you don't necessarily have to have a job, but you at least have to be proactively finding a job. Nope, that's not what I meant to spell. So do you want to like oh, I don't know. Let's go take another go at this. So do you want to like rephrase your question or re-ask your question earlier regarding healthcare
Well,
or
like,
no?
well, would you accept paying higher taxes? You know, that this seems to be
Okay,
this it, that, it seems that like
let me put it this way. If only my taxes was increased for myself and my own healthcare plan, well then fine, yeah, but that's not exactly how the tax system or welfare works, does it? I mean, some people end up
I mean,
paying less.
why should it be only your taxes? You know, millionaires and billionaires can more than afford to pay their fair share of taxes. And by the way, when uh,
Mm,
when millionaires and billionaires don't pay you enough, where you can afford your insurance, housing, and food, they are getting subsidized by you getting government you getting government welfare for yourself, by you having to live with friends and family, or by you suffering your standard of living. That these millionaires and billionaires are being subsidized in some way. You know, it's just not as direct and obvious as you getting government welfare would be.
work requirements and social safety net programs, Urban Institute. Okay. I'm just looking up here some articles regarding the work requirement when it comes to food stamps.
You know,
But I don't
people
know.
wouldn't.
This would probably be a bit of a hard read right here.
You know,
But
that, it, that here's my point. People would not mind paying higher tax if they got something for it. Well, if you paid higher taxes, yeah, you got you know
the thing with
you,
paying
you got
higher,
you and you got like you got your money's worth for it. Would you care if you paid higher taxes?
if only my taxes was going to myself,
No, 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 no,
then
no, 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 no,
fine.
no, no. If you paid higher taxes and you got your money's worth for it, would you care if you paid higher taxes? Yes or no?
With the exact way you're framing it, I sup- uh, I suppose so. Like
Good.
I said again, if my taxes was only going to, if I was only being taxed for myself alone, well then I guess the only issue there is the government is handling my money for me as opposed to me handling my own money directly. That would be a bit of a snag for me personally. So I guess to rethink it, well, then no, I would rather not my taxes get taxed from myself and then
Wait,
it
well,
gone to my own health insurance program. I want to be able to handle my own money in that regard. But on
well,
with
well, well,
taxes, the thing with taxes is that you're not just reliant on your own self, you're reliant on other people. In a lot of cases, people are
you're
reliant on
always
other
relying
people.
on other people. You're in a society. You're always relying on other
I'm talking
people.
about taxes. I'm talking
Yeah,
about
yeah,
taxes
period.
specifically.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
thing with
period.
taxes is that you're
If
reliant
you're
on
in a
other people's
society,
money.
if you're in a society, you're always reliant on other people, no matter what. No matter how independent you are, no matter how little in taxes you pay, you're always relying on other people.
Well, if you're talking about things like employment and whatnot, well, then I guess in some way Yeah, but there's no force being applied to whether or not a person has to work for person A or person B or person C, and so on and so forth. But the thing with taxes, that is that isn't exactly voluntary. The most
Uh,
voluntary that it gets is sales tax, but even then, uh,
yeah, I mean, taxes are voluntary. You can always leave the country.
okay, I
Well,
guess. Well, a person born in the country is not exactly they're not exactly volunteering for for the few taxes that they have to pay before they leave the country, before they decide to
no,
leave the
you're
country.
just repaying other people for the yeah you're just repaying for the benefits of living in the society that those taxes are paying for.
Anyway, that is like a taxation. Taxation is theft versus not theft debate, and I'm not going to have that myself
Yeah,
because I'm not
tax
exact. I'm not
taxes
exactly
are
an.
not that.
I'm not an ANCAP as far um
And
as
caps
much
are just stupid.
as much
They're,
as I like to empathize with ANCAPs. No, you know that kind of brings up another question out of curiosity. Do you consider socialists to be an ally in the same way that I consider ANCAPs to be an ally? Just it's just a question out of curiosity, not a real serious question.
I mean, I'll work with anyone on an issue if we both agree on it. I mean, I'll consider libertarians an ally when it comes to foreign policy.
Well, I mean overall. Like I would not okay, a socialist, for example.
It depends on the issue.
I'll consider a socialist an ally when it comes to something like social issues, for example. E- uh, but overall, I don't consider them an ally. At most, I would consider them as a frenemy, somebody who is a worthy sparring partner and whatnot. I can agree with them on a few issues, but overall on
So
the issues, they're more of a sparring partner than anything else. But
once again,
and caps, I overall consider them an ally because I probably agree with them on at least 80% of the issues, probably, if not a
ugh,
bit more. So you would you consider socialists an overall ally?
depends on the issue we're arguing for. If they're arguing for the same issue I am, I'll consider them an ally.
Okay,
If they're arguing against an issue I'm for, I'll argue against them.
how much would you say that you agree with socialists on the issues, like percentage of the time?
I'm not going to put a number to that.
All right, whatever.
I'm not. Well, I'm
You
not
don't
a
have to.
socialist.
You don't have to
I'm
answer
a
that question.
I'm a social democrat. You know, I still believe in the existence of a capitalist system. It's just it needs to be regulated. A truly free market needs to be regulated.
All right, don't have to. You don't have to answer that question, I guess.
I did answer that question.
Well, the percentage question was what I was meaning. Would you put a percentage on that? And then you were all like, you would not put a percentage on that. You're not mandated to answer that question.
I
But
gave you an answer, just not the answer you were looking for.
I could say that the same with earlier questions that you asked me. But anyway, Um, so another issue. I mean, speaking of free markets, there was some odd comments made, like I would say by you over Twitter. Um, something that you said to me, like if you're like against government regulation or bureaucracies, that does not make you more pro free market or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, if you leave a capitalist system totally unregulated, it'll inevitably lead into a series of monopolies. I mean, that's exactly what happened in the 1900s with Standard Oil and Carnegie Steel and all the other monopolies back then that had to be busted up.
Say if there are absolutely no regulations, no taxes, no government at all, to interfere into the market, and Capistan basically, is that not the freest market possibly possible?
Depends on what you mean by free, though. Like who's being free? If you're talking about the freedom of one corporation to just run absolutely rampant, completely take over everything, and be the dominant force in the market, well, yeah, that of course would be the freest market possible. But if you're talking about on the individual level, for the most individuals to have the ability to participate in the market and compete in the market, then no. And Capistan would be you know the mirror image would be the flip side of the you know flip side of the bad thing coin for people trying to participate in the market.
I
You
th-
know it. It to have a free market, you need to have a level playing field. Where you have you
all
know
right,
uh,
so
rules of commerce. Not just established but also backed up by courts. You need to have like weights and measurements and uh,
how
you
would
know
corporations exist without a government? Asks Night Shift in the chat.
how would a corporation exist without a government?
I think he's trying
Well,
to make the point that technically the definition of a corporation is a company that is backed up by the government via subsidies and whatnot.
that's a bizarre definition.
I'm not so sure if I am exactly putting the right definition on that, but Night Shift, if that is essentially the definition that you're thinking of, well then tell me in the chat by all means. Um,
I mean, a corporation, this is the Google definition of it. Is a company or group of people authorized to act as a single entity, and recognized as such in law. It could be, a corporation could be both private and public. A government is a public corporation. Something like Walmart is a private corporation.
okay. Um, Night Shift is telling me that I was essentially getting the definition right, but I don't know. Uh, so, um,
Well.
essentially,
I want to point out something from Devin Ross. Standard Oil only had 90% of the market at its high point. Yeah, that's a monopoly, you fucking idiot. Fuck.
oh boy. And
Wow.
by the way, people, the only reason why I'm not really putting a cap on Ham is because this ain't an actual moderated debate that I'm having between that I'm moderating between two people. Uh, but anyway, essentially how I would define a free market is if yeah, level playing field like you said earlier, but is also if they are not intervened by the government in how they are to operate their business, particularly on the financial level of things. Like, for example, minimum wage law. Instituting a minimum wage law that would be an interference in the market, and therefore it becomes less of a free market having that in place. Or taxation on this sort of business for doing this kind of business practice and that kind of business practice. I mean, income taxes, sales taxes aside, I'm thinking about something like a tax on the coal industry, explicitly the coal industry, just for being the coal industry. That I would say is would make it less of a free market.
Well, I'm not advocating for a totally free market. I mean, so there are some markets that do and need to be, just stifled out of existence. The coal market, for instance. Coal. If you hadn't noticed, we've been experiencing climate change, human caused climate change for the last 100 years, and coal, oil, other fossil fuels, are the contributors to that, along with another huge cause is livestock. You know,
There is a bit of a I don't know, a substitute that is being slowly implemented in place of the coal industry, and that would be natural gas within like the last 5 to 10 years.
yeah, I mean, natural gas is a lot cleaner than coal, but it still produces a whole lot of carbon dioxide.
Mm.
The greenhouse gas, and you only have to increase the temperatures just a little bit to have a runaway uh, uh, runaway greenhouse effect. It'll feed into itself. You'll have frozen permafrost. It'll start melting, start releasing trapped gases. You'll have what's basically frozen methane on on ocean floors. When the ocean water starts warming up, those will start melting and releasing methane. They're right now starting to melt. Um, there's just a
I
whole
think
slew of issues that are caused by releasing a whole lot of CO2 in the air.
a neat thing would be as if we were able to like trap that methane and use it as a fuel.
You'll still have the issue of CO2 being let out in the air.
Of if we were to like use methane as a fuel, as an energy source. Okay. Um, what was I gonna say?
Jesus fucking Christ. Devin Rojas is gonna die on this hill that Standard Oil wasn't a monopoly because it only had 90% of the market. Fuck. By the way,
What
I'm
so a monopoly defined by you is not if a company owns 100% of the market, but if they just own 90 or most of the given market.
I mean, yeah, you have to. It's exclusive possession or control of the supply of or trade in a commodity or a
Yeah,
service.
and 90% is not the
It,
exclusive possession. 10% owns a portion of that market as well.
I mean, you only need 51% ownership of a company to have exclusive possession or control of that company. Yeah, you don't need
Is
to
that how the
be.
stock? Are you talking about the stock market there or something?
No, I'm talking about you don't need to own 100% of the market to be a monopoly. You don't need to own 100% of the market to have
Well,
control over the market.
you were
Yeah,
talking about exclusive control
yeah,
earlier.
you can have only
51%.
30 or you can only control only 30 or 40%, and you can still control the market through price controls and I mean lowering your prices or advertisements. You don't need to
That's
have
not
exclusive
exclusive.
control. You don't
Wait,
need to
what?
have 100% ownership of the market to have exclusive control.
That doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry.
How does that make sense?
Because you still have like another percentage of that market that is being controlled by other corporations and well
And
companies, let's say, and other individuals. Like there's still competition in that industry.
they are under your control because you can influence the market in massive sweeping ways. I mean, you can buy them out, you can outcompete them, you
It's
can lower
not.
your prices to such a degree where you're actually just losing money,
Yeah,
but they'll go out of
you
business.
can buy them out, but until you officially buy them out and they agree to sell their property and business to you from you buying them out, until that actually happens, That's still not exclusive control, and they don't actually control the market.
My
And
guy,
as far,
my guy, you're so fucking stupid.
what?
You don't need to own 100% of the market to have control over it. You can influence it by buying out other companies. You can do it by lowering your own prices to the point where you're at a
On
loss,
you and I
but
are just disagreeing on the different definitions of a monopoly here and exclusive control. And I'm trying to say here that until like they control like 100% of that area of the market, in that market, that's not a monopoly. And yeah, I
then
mean,
by your
if a person,
definition, a
if
monopoly never existed.
okay,
That's so fucking stupid. Do you not understand how fucking stupid your super exclusive definition is?
so J.P. Morgan did not have exclusive rights and ownership over the railroads. I mean, as far as I know,
That's
that was the
yeah.
case.
First of all, it was Vanderbilt with the railroads, and J.P.
My bad.
Morgan
My
Chase
mistake.
was with the banks.
My mistake. Um, but they did not own 100%. As
They
far
didn't
as I
have
know,
to.
they did.
They didn't have to own 100% of the market to have control to be a monopolistic force. I mean, let's take internet service providers. What's Comcast's share of the market? Let's see. Um, how much?
If I recall correctly, like included exclusive ownership underneath your definition of what a monopoly is. But if they're owning like a certain percentage, like 30 to 50% of the market, it's still not exclusive ownership. And there's still another percentage that's owned by everyone else, or not everyone else, but other people in general.
Uh, basically, you don't need Comcast. They don't own 100% of the market. They're probably maybe a third or another small fraction of it, but they are effectively a monopoly because in my area there's like three or four places that I can choose for quote unquote high speed internet, and only one place for that I can go to for actual high speed internet, and that's Comcast. I could go with satellite, I could go with the local ISP, I could go with dial up, but if I wanted
Okay.
better, if I wanted like 60 70 megabit per second speed, I have to go with Comcast. That's effectively
I mean, different
they
competitors.
have an effective monopoly over high speed internet in my area
Different
and
competitors are
numerous
gonna
areas around the
offer different
country.
speeds. Different competitors are
You know,
gonna offer different speeds.
you
That
know,
doesn't mean
a,
that
a,
it's a
a
monopoly.
monopoly is not it's not this strict rigid thing you're thinking of. It's a lot more nuance to it, as there is a lot more nuance to everything in life, which every right winger I've ever seen seems to be totally scared of that N word nuance.
Yeah, sure. Because I totally called you a socialist just now.
How? What the fuck? What? What?
You go talking about I am just completely devoid of nuance, but I'm trying to like.
Yeah. You're totally devoid of nuance on the definition of monopoly.
As far as I know, it was not a very nuanced definition.
Was Standard Oil a monopoly? Yes or no?
I don't know. I haven't looked up about that.
It They only ever owned 90%. Yeah, only ever owned 90% of the market. Were they a monopoly?
Was that other 10% owned via the black market or what?
Oh my fucking god!
I'm
The
trying to.
black market?
No, I'm trying to ask like
Are,
that other 10%.
are
That
you a
other ten
pro right now?
percent.
Are you fucking with me
That
right now?
that other 10%. Was it legal for them to own that 10%? Those other people that owned the other 10% of that market. Was it legal for them to own it? If it was illegal for them to own it, well then
How
fine.
can you illegally own?
Illegally own a part of the market?
How's that even possible?
Well, I would say through the black market.
God, you're so fucking stupid, aren't you?
And you're a very big fucking asshole. Douchebag.
Well, whatever. I'm done. Move on to the next subject because this is this next level stupid. I'm hearing.
You're not just not gonna agree on that then.
I mean, you can agree with reality, which I agree with. That you don't have to have 100% ownership of the market to be a monopoly. You can be a monopoly by the way you influence the rest of the market via, the ability to own, to buy out other companies, or reducing your own prices to where you're operating at a loss,
Ex-
but the other companies will be forced into bankruptcy.
Exclusive. Okay, so definition of monopoly: exclusive ownership through legal privilege, command of supply, or considered action. That's the first definition. Second definition: exclusive possession or control. Third definition: a commodity controlled by one party. Four, one that has a monopoly. So yeah, I'm going off of that definition, and you're talking about these different percentages of the market being controlled by these companies. If it's less than 100%, then by definition, it doesn't seem to be a monopoly.
Then you're a fucking idiot. That's what you
I'm
are.
going off of Merriam-Webster here, you dolt.
And I'm going off of economics. You fucking right wingers. You claim to be such experts on economics, yet you shit the fucking
What
bed when it comes to the
economics?
definition of what a monopoly is.
I did not hear you cite no
You know,
definition.
standard oil is the example of what a monopoly is.
You're going
But I guess according to you, it's not a monopoly.
according to Merriam-Webster.
No,
It's
according
not
to
a
you.
monopoly.
According to you.
Merriam-Webster.
According to you.
Webster.
According to you.
Jeez. Fine, ignore Merriam-Webster then.
I I'm using Merriam-Webster. It's just you that's coming to the conclusion that there never was a monopoly ever.
And the whole black market point that I was trying to make, like if they weren't legally allowed to own that part of the market, like then I guess technically one could say that it's a monopoly. That monopoly is trying to like crack down on their competitors through the government to try and make it exclusive.
Common sense guy linked this definition in the chat. Monopoly definition: market situation where one producer or a group of producers acting in concert control supply of a good or service, and where the entry of new producers is prevented or highly restricted. Monopolistic firms, in their attempt to maximize profits, keep the price high and restrict the output, and shows little or no responsiveness to the needs of their customers.
Or
Most
group.
governments, therefore, try to control monopolies by imposing price controls, taking over their ownership, called nationalization, or by breaking them up into two or more competing firms. Sometimes governments facilitate the creation of monopolies for reasons of national security, to realize the economies of scale, or are competing internationally, or where two or more producers would be wasteful or pointless, as in the case of utilities. So by this,
Funny that they say group, whereas Merriam-Webster said one party.
you do realize definitions are descriptive and not prescriptive,
So
right?
we have two conflicting definitions then. Well,
You do
kind of,
realize.
anyways.
Are you aware that definitions describe how a word is used and does not prescribe what a word is meant? You do understand
Hmm?
that, right?
Say that again?
Okay, listen closely. Definitions do not prescribe what a word is meant. They describe how a word is used.
Some definitions apparently try to prescribe. So, some uh, dictionaries and whatnot.
What? No, all definitions are descriptive. All of them.
Well, I don't. What was the point of mentioning that again? When I said that we have two conflicting definitions.
You
Anyway, I think that we should move on before we give
yeah,
either of
I'm
ourselves an
about to bust a
aneurysm.
nerve.
Uh, so I guess I'll just ask a quick question on overpopulation and what your thoughts are on that, and what would you try to
Does that
prescribe
mean in
to solve
philosophy
it?
as well?
What?
Uh, yeah, definitions are always descriptive, even in philosophy. It's just that you know, um, you know it, you know, in most of academia, words are generally used the same way. If they're used in a different way, they have a they have a they have it somewhere where they define their terms.
Okay. I went Common Sense Guide at Darkcom. When they say group of companies, they mean conglomerates. Um, yeah, and I guess that's another thing. I mean, if businessdictionary.com was trying to say group of companies, um, they were um, acting in concert. Okay, that would like essentially mean companies like with the same agenda trying to do the same thing to the market. So if you have like one company that owns 60% of the market or something like that, but
I'm
another
a left
company.
leaning sheep according to Conundrum.
So if you have like one company that owns 60%, but another company that owns 40%, and they don't do the exact same thing in their business practices, and they're competing against each other, well, then I guess it would not exactly fit under that definition. BusinessDictionary.com definition of a monopoly.
Well, I get you. Then you'd have a duopoly.
Okay. Well, then, on that note, I guess we'll put that subject aside then. Um, but like was trying to bring up about overpopulation, global overpopulation. Um, how much more time we have? We have about 11 minutes. We'll like just
I
I'll
mean,
just quickly core you
you,
about your
you
beliefs on
really.
this.
I mean, why limit ourselves? Just unless you got a hard limit yourself.
I don't have a hard limit, but I prefer to keep these in under 2 hours just to make it somewhat digestible for people who want to watch it rather than just, you know. And plus, I like to get on with my day and do other stuff in it as well. I don't like to. There are a lot of days I don't spend like feel like spending all freaking day on a stream. I guess that's why I should have told you is that we'll just spend 2 hours talking to each other. But I guess we'll go for the 2 hour 10 mark instead,
But
talking about overpopulation.
what about overpopulation?
I did not listen to the full stream yesterday that you were on with S Man, but what exactly brought up that? Okay, no, I guess we'll start here. What's your exact beliefs on global overpopulation, and what would be your um? Oh, excuse me. What would be your policy? Sorry. What would be your policy suggestions to curb it more precisely?
Um, let's see. Yeah, overpopulation. It's it, it's an issue that takes all the problems that we have in the world. Pollution, climate change, resource scarcity, and just magnifies it. You can have you can have a pie people a bit
Wait,
hungry,
wait. I
or leave
OBS.
16
Wait.
people just starving.
OBS kind of had a hiccup with me there. I do not know why OBS is hiccuping with me.
Them starving. It the Earth has a finite resource has finite resources, and with technology, yeah, you can extend that, but there's only so many calories that there's only so much energy you can draw from the sun. There's only so much calories that you could grow in the soil. There's only so much farmland you can have. There's only so much livestock and fish that you can farm. You know, there's
Mm.
there's only so much CO2 from people just simply breathing that the earth can process. Being so overpopulated as we are is magnifying these serious issues that we're having with climate change and food scarcity. Uh,
So, to kind of speed forward this conversation a little bit, because some people are getting impatient in the chat, what would be your solutions towards overpopulation?
Education. Uh, it, it,
Okay.
it's the fact that uh, more educated people have less kids because you know they realize that, hey, we can't be fucking all the time and having kids because we simply can't pay for it. They also tend to be more wealthy, and the reason why you have so many kids is that when you retire, you need help in your later years when you can't work and earn your own living. So you have to rely on your kids to produce food or money for you in retirement. That's why the Chinese had or all or all societies at one point had practiced having huge, massive families just because they needed a retirement plan, and there was always the intention that most of these kids won't make it past adolescence because most of them will you know die during childbirth or die real young or be sent off to war and be killed.
Mm.
We're living in a time where we're infant mortality is nothing what it was 100 years ago. You know, we're in fewer wars. We have medicine and food that is just far surpasses what we've ever had in history. And
So,
as a consequence, these kids aren't dying.
so
And,
if
and,
I may ask, some people here in the chat are asking questions about more precisely government solutions. Like, for example, Common Sense Guy says, at Cult of Ham, are you saying people should die or we should limit people giving birth? What's your solution? And an extension to that, I do recall, I think you saying that you would like to put a one child policy or some kind of child limit on the United States. That would be
I don't
something that you
think I've
advocate
ever
for.
said that. And I just told you my solution: education.
You never said that. Because I think I
No,
explicitly remember you saying that on a past stream. Like I think it was
no,
around December or January.
no. Yeah, the way you get population to be reduced is to educate people, make educate people that will naturally lead them to be more wealthy,
Uh,
and they will have less kids naturally as a consequence because they won't have to rely on kids for a retirement.
all right. Uh, so you don't advocate for a one-child policy or anything like
I
that.
mean, it's a brute brutish way of going about the issue.
Okay. Um, as far as education goes, I mean, yeah, that's all fine and dandy. Like, don't intervene forcefully in people's lives, but instead be like passively and indirect with your actions via, like you said, education to like tell them, hey,
I
this
mean,
is the route that you should take with your personal life and your family and so on and
I
so
mean,
forth.
you'd be just shocked by how many problems you know in life can be solved with just a handful of policy issues that will just have wide sweeping effects. Like education, and another example is getting rid of the drug war. That it not only does it allow people to get high and yay I can have fun, but
Pumpkin.
it'll reduce it'll kill the gangs. That'll naturally lead to gang crime falling off the face of the planet. That'll lead to you know lower recidivism rate, less necessity for private prisons. You know it, it's a huge domino effect. With just simple policy solutions.
Pumpkin Rose says in the chat he didn't say what he wanted to do or what he proposed. He's being ultra vague so that he can't be criticized. No, to be fair to him, as much as I think he's a douchebag for calling me stupid and whatnot, to be fair to him, he says that he wants to educate people. That's not He's not advocating for any government policy thus far. So, I mean, if that's what you're referring to, well then, yeah,
I mean, what do I mean by education? 4-year college,
I'm not so
uh,
sure
a,
of what.
a better, improving the you know uh, elementary, middle, and high school
Okay,
programs that we have right now. Introduce a basic course in philosophy. You know,
okay,
it,
I guess I
you
kind
know,
of retract what I
it,
just said there. There is where the government policy comes in, reforming school, public education. Um,
I mean, how else do you expect to educate people on a societal level without getting government involved?
well, I guess you could like start your own school or your own widely influential school if you could, but yeah, actually, that's the only other way that I can think of.
I think probably the most important
Start your own.
improvement we can make to our education system, specifically grade school, would be you know a series of philosophy classes where you'll learn basic argumentation and what logical fallacies are,
I don't
and
think you.
how to how, you know it so many people take so many things just for granted. For example, why do you think the flat earth movement is becoming in it gained so much traction, or the anti-vax movement gained so much traction? It's because people
Taken for granted the knowledge that was given to them, but they won't accept.
they took for granted the assumption that yeah, vaccines are good, that yeah, the earth is round, but they never actually went through the process of understanding how we came by that conclusion. You know, they don't know how we know that. You know, you don't have to actually do the research yourself. You just have to understand the process by which we
Hmm.
come to that conclusion. You
Yeah,
don't need
and I
you don't
want
need to
to.
know nitty gritty details, just the overall idea, and that's what most people are missing is the overall idea that we have.
And kind of on that point, I don't think a person necessarily needs to learn argumentation or anything like that
Um,
in order to know the type of lifestyle that they should take
uh,
for what
Donkey
you
Kong,
think is the preferred
you
lifestyle.
absolutely need to know what basic argumentation is because I've caught you. I mean, even during this stream, there's so many logical fallacies and avoiding questions
Logical
it,
fallacies, quote unquote.
and you probably don't even realize that you're doing them. I mean, in fact, I would guarantee you don't realize that you're doing any of them because you've never actually taken the time to sit down and understand how to formulate an argument, how to understand a question, how to know, how to realize understand what a logical fallacy is. Difference between a formal and an informal fallacy.
Oh, well, I'm just a layman learning as he goes. Nothing wrong with that in my opinion.
There's plenty wrong with that. It leaves you open and vulnerable to charlatans like the anti-vaxxers. You know,
Well, I don't know if you're projecting that on me or not, but
but
I don't believe
it's
anti-vaxxers.
that general mindset that you're having is why these anti-vaxxers and these flattards are gaining such prominence.
And as far as that healthcare question goes, I hope that I did answer that question sufficiently enough, anyways. In all eventuality, I guess at first it was just I don't know, slightly confusing or whatever.
Hmm.
Should have asked
Yeah,
some.
uh,
I might have had. I should have probably asked some questions of, "Hey, what do you mean by that?" or whatever. I
yeah,
don't know.
that'd be like the minimum I would do when it comes to improving the education system overall. Other than overall, uh, making more people more educated, and that will naturally lead to people not having so many kids as much, and being more wealthy, so they won't even need those kids in the first place to have a retirement.
Okay. Well, back on the whole issue of overpopulation, because we're starting to sidetrack from that. You might not advocate for a one-child policy, although there are some people who kind of did, like Gerald Ford, for example, and Nixon kind of was borderlining on shit along those lines as well. Some of my most least favorite presidents. Um, as far as solutions to global overpopulation, I would prefer that if we invested in vertical farming, for example, like they have some vertical farming already done in Singapore, for example. I think that was one of them, and
I mean,
maybe
well,
Japan as well.
once again, there's only so much energy you can draw from the sun. There's only so many calories that you can produce on the planet before you reach the point where you just simply cannot support any more people. The Earth is finite. It has a finite population. I mean, a finite supply of resources.
And something that I almost forgot to ask.
Excuse me. I have to go real quick. Bye bye. I mean, well, I'll be back.
Okay. Well, I was thinking of wrapping up here pretty quickly. Um, Janitor, custodian of Gulf City, condescending little shit, isn't he? Yeah. Ham is insufferable in that way, honestly. As amusing or fun Ham can be to spar with and whatnot, he's still That's a severe downside on him. That answer suggests that there is a limit he's willing to go to. At Darkon, press him on it, please. Sorry, what do you mean? Invest in private space programs and colonizing other worlds, says Nightshift 10,000. Yeah, that's another idea that I think should be done. Population limit policies are shit. Look at statistics. We are underpopulating, to be truthful. That is another issue right there. Is the fact that the younger generations are getting smaller and smaller to the point of where that we won't have enough, young people to support the older people via through private interactions or investing into Social Security. Either way, it's not going to be enough people to support the older generations. LOL, ham, logical fallacies. You need to formulate an argument, says the person that say, oh, education will sort out population. Yeah, ham. STF, says Common Sense Guy. Pumpkin Rose says, notice he hasn't elaborated on his logical fallacy accusation, despite the fact that he's not actually formulating arguments as it is. I wouldn't say that later statement, but that former statement in that comment, Pumpkin Row, I would say is has a grain of truth to it. Actually, it is truthful. He hasn't fully elaborated what fallacies that I have used. They went through the same system as you did. They don't accept it. Says Common Sense Guy. Nightshift 10,000 says mandatory debate classes. That may I don't know if that was essentially what Ham was advocating for or not. Add more classes to the ineffective system despite blah 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 blah. Pumpkin Rose says, holy shit, he's just never going to answer your fucking question. Who you referring to right there?
I'm black.
No, you're pretty much pasty ass bald egghead.
Oh.
But anyway, I guess this one question that I will lastly ask, and then we'll just end the stream.
Your chat does not like me.
Well, sorry to say, but you don't exactly have the most likable personality.
Pumpkin Row, absolutely, government should be allowed to force vaccines into people's bodies if they want to go to school, because there are people who cannot be vaccinated, and people who do not vaccinate are putting other people's lives at risk. So anti-vaxxers are and have actually killed people.
Common Sense Guy Darkani says there is limits on the planet. That suggests he has a limit in mind for these natural limitations on the planets. Ham, I think, has said 1 billion before.
Is he talking about, mining from other planets? It'd be cheaper just to get the resources here on Earth, or just a set of colonies on those planets. I can't exactly remember the math, but mining asteroids would be just insanely fucking expensive, and honestly, it probably cause mineral markets just collapse in wealth. Since there's like an asteroid out there somewhere with just an insane amount of gold on it. But once, if we ever got access to that gold is worthless now.
Well, gold could at least be used as an electricity conductor as opposed to copper and whatnot. If anything, at least.
So, wait. But Pumpkin Rose says, so CultofHam, it was totally fine when the vaccines that the government was passing out caused people in Africa to become sterile. Let's see, vaccines.
I would suggest that you kind of try to ignore the chat because I'm wanting to wrap up the stream here soon, as
I'm sorry, but
as I'm tired of getting insulted and condescended here.
Sorry, but vaccines is like one of those sensitive issues that I just have to call bullshit out on because I mean it is literally putting people's lives at risk. And to you, Pumpkin Row, there is no one is ever claiming that vaccines are perfect. They do have side effects. Some people are allergic to them. Uh, but overall, they have a such a beneficial effect on society. They cause so many diseases that were life threatening, illnesses 100 years ago. They are nothing now. Polio no longer exists because of vaccines. And
So,
anti-vaxxers, such as I guess yourself, are wanting to bring back polio and measles and mumps, and you just want to get people killed. That's all you want to do because this perceived effect that vaccines will have on autism.
anyway, moving on from that. So, my question to you:
Yeah, Pumpkin Road. Yeah,
if
exactly. No, nobody has a right to put another person's life at risk, which is why vaccines are necessary. If you want to go and participate in the school system, you have to get vaccinated. If you want to
let's
have kids, you shouldn't force your anti-vaxxer beliefs on your kids who has no ability to have any knowledge over vaccines or not. They
Ham,
have,
you're pretty
you
much going
know,
to be here all day with Pumpkin Row because thank you, Pumpkin Row, for all your participations in the chat and whatnot. But uh, anyway, I want to ask you this one last question before we go, and then maybe you can address a few more things from Pumpkin Row.
I,
But
I,
with this concern of overpopulation, shouldn't I mean it seems kind of self defeating for you to be advocating, at least in your view, it seems kind of self defeating to be advocating for a single payer healthcare system and be worrying about overpopulation at the same time because the reason why you and a lot of other people want to advocate for single payer healthcare is because of the proposed fact that it saves more lives than private healthcare system. So
what's
if
wrong
a
with saving
private
lives?
what
What's wrong with saving lives that already exist?
the problem with that is the overpopulation issue. I mean, particularly with okay, if you want to like voluntarily through your private interactions donate to people's healthcare or whatever, well then that's fine. But we're talking about government proposals here. I must
Yeah,
emphasize,
government proposals that'll be cheaper overall.
but and that aside, um, talking about government proposals to like save lives, to actively save lives. And it's just going to, it seems kind of self defeating in a way to be advocating for taxing people to save themselves or to save their fellow man to overpopulation. That seems like it'll be like rubbing salt in a wound, that being overpopulation.
Now, those people already exist. They're already here. But you know, the overpopulation issue, we fix that by reducing the number of people who are born, so that they never exist in the first place. So we don't have to worry about them starving to death because of a lack of resources.
Okay, not gonna argue any further. I'm just gonna wrap up. Anyway, something. Pumpkin Rose says that's a straw man argument. Accusing someone of wanting others to die is just an ad hom. Don't know if you want to address that before we go.
I'll go ahead and address Pumpkin Row real quick. Um, but if adults don't want to be vaccinated, that's fine. They just can't participate, in public schools and whatnot, or in areas where they will come into contact with other people who may potentially be unvaccinated. Um, but the kids, the kid should absolutely be vaccinated because when it comes to parents or doctors, who who is more educated on the validity of vaccines? It's the doctors. So so fuck you about your quote unquote parental rights. You do not have the right to kill your own kid. You
That
know, you do not have the right to force your kid to have to suffer through polio or measles or mumps or chickenpox or whatever. You do not have that right to force that kid to go through that suffering. Quick shot in the arm, a little bit of redness, a little bit of tenderness, maybe a fever, and that's it.
um, I would disagree with the framing of saying that they are like killing their kids.
If you don't vaccinate your kids and your kids die, you did murder your kids.
It's more of a lack of action. Killing requires action.
It
It,
is
it,
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 it
it
parental negligence. If you want to like use that wording, well then, fine, I guess. But killing, that just seems to be a
I mean
misnomer.
it's through your direct actions that kid died. That
Lack
is
of
murder.
action, rather.
No. It is action because you have to prevent that kid from being vaccinated in the first place.
Oh, brother. Anyway, I think
I
that's
have no
where
right
we
to
are going to.
decide what's in the best interest of someone else. So I guess parents have no right to decide what's in the best interest of their kid. Fucking moron.
Hmm? What? Who were you addressing right there?
Oh, Pumpkin Row.
Uh,
I don't know if they're an anti-vaxxer or they're one of these hyper libertarian fuckwits who thinks it's better for a kid to die than to be subject to a little bit of suffering, with a fever or tenderness because they got a vaccine.
anyway, I'm gonna cut Ham off right there. Um, so because we are like what's the time again? 2 hours, 18 minutes. Anyway, yeah, I want to get on with my day. I hope that's not a big deal to you, Ham. But hey, thanks for coming on. Do you have anything closing to say?
um, nah, nothing much other than your fans seem to hate me. uh,
And tell me something
and,
new.
if any of them wants to grow a pair and have a discussion with me, they can contact me at Blue Collar Ham on Twitter
Mm,
if they want to continue this discussion because I think I hit a bit of a nerve with that vaccine issue.
Night Shift 10,000 versus CultofHam, the battle of the century. Anyway, for all of you,
Isn't Night Shift 10,000 that guy that was so angsty about the GOP effigy?
I don't know. But anyway, CultofHam, everybody. I have his Twitter link down below. Don't have his YouTube channel link down below because he doesn't he doesn't care enough about it. But anyway, thank you all for participating. Thank you, Ham, for agreeing to this call. And I'll see
Suck
you
dick
all.
every day.
Oh, jeez. And on that rather crude but jolly note, see y'all later and God bless.